My name is Jack Gilroy, and I should just introduce myself briefly to let you know why we're introducing Cindy here. We were in contact with Cindy over 2 months ago, asking her to come to Binghamton and Ithaca, New York, and Scranton. And I grew up in this area from Carbondale and went to the University of Scranton right up on the hill, where the most memorable two professors, one Father Richard McSorley, and the other was Frank Brown. Frank Brown was an amazing historian and teacher. And Frank said, you know, that he loves the Broadway shows, and he's been down, and in fact, even inside some of the theaters in New York. And this he's saying that back from the 1920s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, there was a sign over a lot of the doors to let the stars know, just think about how good they were. And the sign said, if you think you're good, try Scranton. So we know it's not an easy run here, because if you've read in the newspaper, for example, Boris Krauchukats, Boris stated, is that close? Boris? Boris stated that we told him about the episode of trying to get Cindy. The Catholic Church first, the Bishop Bambera, said that she was not to speak in any church and not to speak in any Catholic institution. The University of Scranton had accepted the invitation, but then they found they didn't have time or room or whatever. We went then to the Methodist, and we had a variety. I won't go into it all, but from no parking or little parking to they didn't want to do an in-your-face sort of thing to Bishop Bambera. And others, the Clinton or the Court Street Church, they said that perhaps there would be misunderstanding of Cindy being connected with Hillary Clinton because her mother and father went to that church. So there are various reasons. We finally got the non-sectarian place right up the street, the Electric City Theater Company, but within a period of a week their lawyer found a loophole and saying that it couldn't, Cindy couldn't be here because she would probably be dealing with political issues. Cindy and the rest of us just walked by there, and there's a play opening up on Nazism. The last I heard, the National Socialist was a political party, but whatever the case, she has a constitutional right to be here. That is the most precious of all the rights that we have. And thank you, Cindy, for being here with us. We sent a very respectful, nice letter to Bishop Bambera and asked him to come out. And we would be wonderfully surprised and really joyous if he did come out and took the microphone and spoke to us. As the new bishop of Scranton, it's such a teachable moment. The whole concept of Christ and peace and justice. Cindy taught, in fact, taught Catholic social teaching in California. But she's not allowed to go into any Catholic institution. But we'll set that aside, and we'll just say that we hope that the grace that the bishop has will eventually open up to a change of attitude in Scranton, a change of attitude that you can be for nonviolence and still be a Christian. Gandhi said that it's only the Christians that don't understand that Jesus was nonviolent. Cindy is the mother of a young man who was slain in Iraq. And she is here to tell not just that story, but her 6 years of grief that she has turned into amazing energy around the country. And I thank you again, Cindy, very much for being with us.
Thank you so much. Gandhi also said, I like your Christ, but I don't like your Christians because they're nothing like your Christ. And so I think the bishops are kind of proving Gandhi's point here. You know, I didn't even know that Pax Christi, and I really support the work of Pax Christi, Catholic workers, call to action, all over the country. I'm welcomed by those communities. And also the UU Church. You know, I call myself a recovering Catholic, and most of the members of the UU Church are recovering Catholics too. But I didn't leave the church 7 years ago. The church left me. And Bye. We have a nice day. And so I didn't even know that Pax Christi was arranging for me to have a talk in one of the parish halls until I was banned from it. Until we got the letter from the bishop and I guess it was two people. I don't know if it was a bishop and a cardinal and a bishop. Wow. I'm surprised the Pope didn't sign it too. And, you know, I wouldn't have chosen to go to a Catholic parish or a Catholic church, even though I've spoken in many of them since my son died. And I've always had these positions, even when I was a youth minister. Because, you know, I was always told that we hate the sin but not the sinner. And that the things that the Catholic Church does, and I'm not going to talk about it that much longer, but they spent millions of dollars in my state trying to tell people that they can't marry the person that they're in love with, that they have been called to marry. They're spending millions of dollars trying to criminalize a woman's right to reproductive choice over her own body. They're closing parishes. And they're also, one thing that drove me out of the church as a youth minister and as a mother of 4 altar servers, 2 boys and 2 girls, and I fought for the right for my girls to be altar servers. I trained altar servers. I was the coordinator of the youth mass at St. Mary's Parish when I was a youth minister. As a mother, as a youth minister, as a protector of young people, when the church, the scandal came out of not just about pedophilia, which was bad enough, but spending millions of dollars and transferring pedophiles from parish to parish so they can harm more children. That's when the church left me. And the scandal is deepening and still happening. But yet somebody who comes not with a message that's anti-Catholic, I never talk about that. I never go to parishes or go to communities and encourage people to have abortions. I never go to communities and foment same-gender marriage, even though I support it. And I support the right of a woman to get out of an abusive marriage without being excommunicated. So I excommunicated myself. And so I come with a message that killing is wrong. A pro-life message. And not just a pro-life message about being anti-war and for peace, but how about having a world where women feel happy, and where women feel loved and protected, and their children loved and protected, where education, good education is a right, healthcare is a right, a job is a right, healthy food is a right. These aren't just civil rights, they're human rights. And many times the way our U.S. empire is around the world, people are harmed around the world because of economic ills. And women, for whatever reason, it's not us to judge, don't feel comfortable bringing children into a world like this. And as much as I support a woman's right to choose, I also support a woman's right to choose to have a baby too. Thank God for my 2 grandchildren. But anyway, that's my message. And I think the bishop shutting me out made a bigger deal of what was happening than just letting me come here and talk about peace, talk about ending the wars. And another reason, after my son was killed, I started to research. I took lay ministry classes. I never heard a strong position out of anybody in the hierarchy against these Arab, this jihad that America has against Arabs in the Middle East. I hear a lot of good liberation theology in South America, but really not strong positions against killing of Muslims. As a matter of fact, the church is historically pro-killing Muslims. So even though I'm not Catholic, even though I'm I'm what I call searching on this road of humanity. I seriously believe in the teachings of the gospel, and I want to call the church to those same teachings. Thank you. Are there any questions?
When will they learn?
You gotta ask them. Criminal trials for members of the Bush administration. You know, we just found out that a court in California ruled their NSA spying program illegal. Duh! Our Constitution rendered that spying program illegal. And of course, our new president is fighting that ruling, and he voted for the FISA Modernization Act, which really made that legal. So yeah, I think that I am for, and I will work the rest of my life to hold George Bush and his administration accountable. But we need to also focus on this current administration and their continuation of the Bush policies. Every time I go to Dallas, I make sure to pay a visit to George Bush's new neighborhood, so he knows that you know, there's still many people in this country who don't think he should have had an orderly transition. You know, we didn't chase Bush out of office. He left in the constitutionally appointed time. He should have left long before that in handcuffs. Well, you know, as far as my study of the Gospels, Jesus was a socialist. Jesus wants everybody taken care of. And so I have no problem with having everybody in this on this planet taken care of. I have no problem with that theology. Absolutely. But you know, that's a valid point and well taken. Some people have a problem with it. Some people don't have a problem with it. You know, that just it shows the evil of the other too. You know, when I was growing up, we were supposed to be terrified of communists. Now we're supposed to be terrified of terrorists. We have to be terrified of something so the military-industrial complex can still keep building their bombs and their tanks and their guns and can keep using our children as cannon fodder and using our children to kill other people. So, you know, why don't we, you know, be courageous and support each other and support other people instead of being constantly told that a certain segment of the world population is our enemy. They're not our enemies. We don't have anything to fear from them. What we have something to fear from is our governments. The reason she cannot be given a forum inside a church facility is because she supports positions that are contrary to church teaching. In particular, her support for abortion rights and same-sex marriage. So, and you know what the spokesperson of the diocese said? Stick to your original message.
How many people do they allow to speak to favor capital punishment?
Right. Capital punishment, war, pedophilia.
They preach, they don't actually...
Exactly. They allow them to speak in parishes every day. You know, in fact, they're up on the altar.
Who handed that piece of paper to you?
The spokesperson for the diocese. Bishop Ambera is conveniently on a retreat this weekend. Yeah. So I said, well, I can understand why you would, you know, you have the right to exclude me from church facilities. It's your church. You have that right. I don't really even want to speak in one of your churches anyway. But you don't have the right to blackball me from an entire community.
That's true.
Just because you disagree with my, oh, we didn't do that. I said, that's not what the entire community said, you know.
My name is Jack Gilroy, and I'm not living at this time in Scranton, but I have spent many years in the area. I went to school at St. Rose School in Carbondale, the same school that your new Bishop Ambera went to. St. Rose was known as a school, even though we graduated 35 or 40 tops, as a school that graduated generals. We had 3 generals who graduated over a period of a few years. So now you have got a person, a man of peace, we hope, in Bishop Ambera. So we suggest that you support him and help him develop the grace to bring the question, or rather the point of peace and the nonviolence of Jesus to this area that is so Christian area. But it's interesting that a Gold Star Mother is a very rare club in the United States compared to what a Gold Star Mother would be in Iraq, where over 1 million people have died since the United States started the war there. But a Gold Star Mother in the United States is a small club. And Cindy Sheehan is one of those people, a Gold Star Mother. Her son, you remember, if you can reflect back a few years, her son, Casey, was a mechanic in a Humvee. And she'll perhaps tell you about this when she speaks. Cindy will say what she wants to say when she wants to say it. But he was killed in Iraq, and she has been in grief for 6 years and has taken that grief and translated into energy to try to rouse people up, to say, you know, where is the outrage? Why are we not saying more about this war, and not just war, but wars in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and the war that is going on in Pakistan that so few of us pay any attention to. The aerial assassination vehicles we call drones that are firing death and destruction into Pakistan. These are things that concern Cindy Sheehan. And these are the things that should concern all, whether you're a bishop, a priest, a minister. And if you could only get to your leaders, your church leaders, and say, when are you going to start speaking about the real issue of nonviolence? And we have here the woman then. So we give you then the woman who really has done this for the past 6 years and will continue to do it. She said she would love to be back in California with her grandchildren. She would really think it would be wonderful if Obama and the group would change, but that hasn't happened. So she's on the road, and here she is. Please give a warm welcome to Cindy.
Thank you, Jack. Let's hear another round of applause for Jack for being so stubborn about bringing me to Scranton. And the community here who always wanted me to speak here. Thank you to them, and George McNanamith from he's been a friend of mine for a long time. I've never been able to pronounce his name. From Binghamton, and the other people in this area who invited me to come and speak. I'm very grateful for that. This is the first time out of I don't know how many times I've spoken since my son was killed. Thousands. Whether it's been an interview or gone to a community or here in the United States or around the world. You know, I've been all over the world since the summer of 2005. It's the first time I've been shut out of an entire community. I mean, we do have a lot of things where we're outside. We have programs outside. So, you know, if we can't go into a building, you know, if you believe in God, God's everywhere, right? Yes. Not just inside a Catholic church, like some of them would want you to believe. So anyway, Casey, it was been 6 years ago last Sunday that he was killed. I don't really want to talk about that. It's super raw to me. But let's talk about my grandkids. How many people here are grandmas or grandpas? Raise your hand. Okay. I'm sorry, but we might have to get into a war because I have the cutest grandchildren that have ever been born on the face of the earth. And they're the smartest, and they're the healthiest, and they're the most wonderful grandchildren. And I've gotten into many grandma wars before. For some reason, the grandmas want to think that their grandkids are the cutest, smartest, healthiest, most wonderful grandchildren. But it's been a long 6 years. Some people have been doing this for many, many more years than I have. And sometimes it gets very frustrating. Sometimes we get so discouraged. Sometimes we feel like we can't even get out of bed and do it one more time. Because we've been doing it and doing it and doing it, and nothing has changed. More people are being killed every day. I especially have taken on the cause of what Jack calls the unmanned assassination vehicles that are killing innocent civilians at a horrendous clip, not just in Pakistan. The CIA happens to be running that program because, like Cambodia and Laos, we're not there, except 3 U.S. troops were just killed there last month in Pakistan. The drones are being launched from airfields in Pakistan. It's about a program of terror. It's about disabling that country of Pakistan. Well, you know what? I bet there's millions of grandmothers in Pakistan who think their grandchildren are the cutest, most wonderful, brightest children on this planet. And when my grandchildren were born, that just gave me more motivation to get it out of bed every day and fight for their future. And that's what we're doing. I can't bring my son back. It doesn't matter how hard I work. It doesn't matter how many communities I go to. It doesn't matter how many death threats I get, or how many nasty comments, or how much love and support I get, which is way more than the death threats and the nasty comments, by the way. I'll never be able to bring Casey back. But what I've been trying to do is prevent other Gold Star mothers all over the world, like Jack pointed out. And that's what I have devoted my life to. And to me, as a Catholic youth minister for 8 years, that's the teaching of the church. That's the teaching of Christ. That's not necessarily the teaching of the church, but that's the teaching of Christ. That every life is precious, not just unborn, but every life is precious. And my son's life at 24 was just as precious, if not more precious, as when he was at 24 weeks inside me. So that's what we have to always remember, that yes, drones, these unmanned assassination vehicles, they might protect, but it's debatable. They might protect U.S. life. However, what they do is create more people who hate the United States. Do you remember when somebody walked on a base and assassinated 8 CIA agents or CIA contractors? That was in direct response to a drone bombing attack. So they're not keeping us safe. These wars of terror aren't keeping Americans safe. And who became the judge, or who became the definer and the valuer of life? Who says that one American soldier's life is better than an Iraqi baby, or a Pakistani baby, or an Afghan baby, or of any age? Who made the value of an American life more than anybody else's life? Each life on this planet has the exact same intrinsic value. Exact. There's not one person's life that is more valuable than another person's life. And we Americans don't seem to be able to understand that. We not only need to understand that, but we need a whole new paradigm in this country to say, yes, I want to be safe. I want my children to be safe. I want my grandchildren to be safe, but not at the expense of somebody else's children or grandchildren. If one person in this world has to be tortured to keep me safe, I don't want to be safe. I want that person to have the same kind of safety and right to life that I do, that anybody else in this country has. Now, I find it despicable that this courthouse is festooned with a pro-war sentiment. You know, one of my chapters in my new book, Myth America, MYTH America, it's an ebook. You can find information on my website, cindysheehansoapbox.com, where you can also listen to a lot of great radio shows. I do have my radio show there and my blog there. But in my new book, I have a chapter. I dispel 20 myths. So I identify 20 myths, I dispel 20 myths. One of the myths, that's a really hard word to say, by the way. One of the myths that I dispel is that it's noble to die in robber class wars. That's why I went to Crawford, because George Bush said that my son died for a noble cause. War, I'm sorry. It doesn't matter how many quotes you can find. War is not noble. It's not noble to join and fight and die and kill innocent people for profit. And that's what these wars are for. They're for profit. And why should, like the saying goes, why should poor kids fight and die in rich men's wars when the rich men and their children don't go and fight and die in these wars? So there's a whole, not that I want them to, I don't want anybody to, but you know, why do the kids of the working class and the poor class, children of color and disadvantaged youth are far more likely to join and die than children of what I call the robber class, the elites, the oligarchy that has always ruled this country? Why should our children have to pay to enrich them, to make their lives better, and makes our lives far worse? So in this myth that it's noble to die in robber class wars, they need state sanctioned propaganda, that whether it's by the propaganda corporate news media we have, the propaganda schools that disseminate this propaganda. You know, I'm a history major. I went to UCLA. From the time I was in first grade up until my upper division classes at UCLA, I thought all history was either made by wars or white guys. You know, and then I found out, no, there's a whole other history that Howard Zinn writes about, the people's history. You know, and that's what we're taught. That's what we're indoctrinated into. We're indoctrinated into a war culture almost like Sparta. You know, and they say that we should love the warriors but hate the wars. What I want to do is I want to change the terminology. Why don't we love our children and hate wars? Why don't we love the children of Iraq and Pakistan and Afghanistan and hate the wars? And you know, one thing about loving our children is giving them the right to a free and easily accessible education all the way through university. Another thing about loving our children is giving them the right to health care, free and readily accessible, good health care. Because that's why our children join the military. Because college is so expensive, health care is unattainable, you know, unless you're one of the lucky ones in this country. I'm not one of the lucky ones. I am a vegan, I exercise, I don't smoke, and I don't drink that much. You know why? Because I don't have health care. And I want to live to be 65 and hope that Medicare is still available by then. But the Obama administration seems to want to gut Medicare. So this is the message that I bring, that we can't have peace without some kind of economic justice and equality. And that's not just about Americans being comfortable. It's about the whole world being comfortable. And that's when we're going to have peace. And it's going to be the people that bring peace. It's not going to be a politician. It's not going to be a bishop. It's not going to be a pope. You know, it's going to be the people that bring peace. It's going to be when we say that I love my children, but I love Fatima's children in Pakistan just as much. You know, I heard from a mother in Iraq whose son was killed in the same battle my son was killed in. And he was one of the insurgents. And she told me she was sorry. She said, we don't want to kill your children, but your children are occupying our country. The last thing we want to do is kill your children. They're not our enemies. And I said, you don't have to tell me you're sorry. You know, your country is put in a difficult position. The only valid reason for, you know, and some people might argue with this, for violence is self-defense. I blame George Bush. I blame my country for my son's death. You know, your son may have pulled the trigger, but my son never should have been there in the first place. No American troops should have been there in the first place. So, you know, Noam Chomsky calls, or Noam Chomsky's, or Chalmers Johnson, or Thomas Jefferson, or Karl Marx, I never remember who. I'm kind of horrible at things like that. Call this American exceptionalism. You know, and that's one of the myths that we're founded on. That if our country does something reprehensible, it must have good intentions. Well, no. There's no intention good enough to justify the death of innocent people. So thank you so much for coming out today. It's really nice to see you. It's really nice to see a good crowd on a Friday afternoon. Thank you for having the courage to bring me here. Okay, he said that he didn't believe we should be in Afghanistan. I agree. You know, Afghanistan didn't attack us. Iraq didn't attack us. If we believe the official story, it was 19 people with box cutters. 16 of them were Saudi Arabians, if we believe the official story. Then he said, do I support a new investigation with subpoena power into 9/11? Yes, I've been on the public record about that. And I supported the initiative in New York City, NYC Can. I'm very good friends with the people who supported that initiative. Then he asked me, would I go on record saying that 9/11 is an inside job? I think there's a lot of definitions of inside job. You know, from that Dick Cheney was planning it in his bunker between heart attacks, you know, to whatever. You know, I don't think, in my opinion, as not being an expert, so I can't make an expert opinion, but in my slightly informed position, I think that there had to be, for an attack of that scale to go on, with so many things happening, you know, like the whole military being on training that day, the audit. Look what happened when a diplomat from Qatar smoked a cigarette on an airplane a couple days ago. They scrambled F-18s. You know, that's protocol, and that protocol wasn't followed. Why wasn't that protocol followed? There's a lot of things that are unanswered questions. So I don't know how far inside it went, but I do think that it is somewhat, it had to be somewhat of an inside job. And so, but I'm not saying, you know, I don't know how far inside. I definitely don't think that it was, what do they call it, holograms and heat, something weapons that brought it down. You know, but I think that there is definitely a lot of unanswered questions, and somebody had to be complicit in it, I'm pretty sure.
First, Cindy, I want to say welcome to Scranton. I appreciate all your good work you're doing for the cause.
Thank you.
And I'd like to ask you, besides bringing the troops home from Iraq, do you also support the closure of the U.S. Embassy in Iraq that cost the U.S. taxpayers $700 million? Do you support the closing of that embassy as well?
I want the troops out of Iraq. I want the troops out of Afghanistan. You know, I think that if we have diplomatic relations with a country, we need an embassy, but we don't need an embassy that's the size of 17 football fields. That's not an embassy. That's an occupational entity. That's an entity to occupy that country, not for a few years, not till the end of 2011, but forever. So I support closing the bases. I support drastically if the people of Iraq elect a government that wants to have diplomatic relations with the United States, that's their prerogative. And to have an embassy there, they're building an embassy in London that's $1 billion. These embassies aren't embassies, they're garrisons. And that's because we're loved all over the world, right? People want the American way of life. So the people who work in other countries have to be garrisoned in most of these, even London, they have to be garrisoned there. I support pulling all of the mercenary killers out of these countries, stopping these drone bombings. I call a slay station game. Murder by Joystick is this new slay station game, you know, and because they have ways. You know, this new so-called nuclear pact, that reduction pact that Obama signed with Medvedev. I can't pronounce his name. I can pronounce Ahmadinejad's name, but I can't pronounce George's name or Medvedev's name. It's George and Medvedev. Anyway, they said believe this or not, it's deceptive because they're going to change the way they count the weapons instead of reducing the weapons. So yeah, we just really have to stay on top because they're making war as impersonal as they can get. You know, there's no draft. I'm not for a draft. There's no war taxes. There's no shared sacrifice in this country anymore. If there is a war, there should be some kind of shared sacrifice, not just a few people having to bear the brunt of all of this. You know, we don't see it on the TV. This week, 2 particularly reprehensible things came out about one in Iraq and one in Afghanistan. So you know what happened that day they came out? Tiger Woods and Little Tiger had a press conference. So that was all over the news, was about Tiger Woods and Little Tiger. And I heard when he went to Augusta, 200 media went there, not to see him play golf, but to talk about his so-called addiction. What about our addiction to war in this country? When are we going to start talking about that?
I want to ask you about the use of depleted uranium in our weapons, in our bunker busters, etc. Speaking of that treaty that was just signed, where we're not supposed to use nuclear weapons in a country that doesn't have nuclear weapons. However, we have been using them with depleted uranium, which has been poisoning our own troops, and it's been causing birth defects in Iraq and in other places like Afghanistan. So do you want to comment on that?
Depleted uranium is put on bullets to make them armor piercing, put on bombs to make them stronger, but depleted uranium is also used on the steering columns of Humvees to make those stronger. So depleted uranium is a serious issue. People from the Gulf War, the first Gulf War, they have that Gulf War syndrome that's probably depleted uranium related. After Casey was killed, I didn't know anything about depleted uranium. And of course I had known about Gulf War syndrome, but nobody had ever linked it in my experience with depleted uranium. I didn't know what DU was. But almost right after Casey was killed, I started having dreams. And he would come back alive and he would say, I'd say, oh Casey, oh my God, I thought you were killed in Iraq. He'd say, no Mom, I'm here, but I'm not going to be here for long. I'm dying of cancer. And that's a recurring dream before I even knew about depleted uranium. So yeah, the United States waged a nuclear war in the Balkans. They're waging a nuclear war in Iraq and Afghanistan right now. And depleted uranium is one of the best kept secrets because we don't want to say, you know, there's a risk of you dying in this war. There's a risk of you being wounded. Another well-kept secret of war is post-traumatic stress disorder. There's one quote along here that I agree with. Something about nobody comes back the same from a war. No unwounded soldiers in war. I believe almost every one of our troops that goes over there is killed in some way. They come back not the same person that we send them. Their spirit is killed, or they're wounded for life, you know, or they suicide. Last year was the first year where Iraq veterans, their suicides outnumbered the people killed in combat. You know, it's still a horrible problem from Vietnam. Homelessness, suicide, Agent Orange sickness. Some of our friends are still dying from Agent Orange sickness from Vietnam. They're dying out in the streets. They're not counted. The ones who commit slow suicide by drug and alcohol abuse, they're not officially counted. So anyway, yeah, it's just we can't talk about these things because then our kids wouldn't sign up. If they knew that there was a good chance that they would go over, come back with cancer, or come back unable to give, you know, have normal children. Some women, partners of soldiers, are getting cancer of their uteruses, or uteri, whatever you say, from the depleted uranium contaminated, you know what, of their partners. So it's a horrible, horrible, insidious, awful, not talked about consequence of not just war, being in the military. Being in the military exposes you to not just depleted uranium, but a lot of other carcinogens, poisons, whatever. It's not a healthy, it is not a healthy environment, and it's not a healthy institution to belong to.
I just had one question, the one that I asked you before about you've been arrested a few times in Washington. What'd you say, about 10 times? In fact, I know you chained yourself to the fence at the White House fence a couple of times. I was wondering if you could speak to why you do that kind of direct action, and how that works into your concept, as you were explaining last night, about what a peaceful revolution.
Okay. Okay, so yes, I have been arrested, probably in total about 15 times now, probably about 10 times right in front of the White House. Only 2 times when Obama's been president now, but he's only been a president for 15 months, so give me a chance. And but this time I got arrested was March 20th, and we had a march in DC. Another thing that I'm vehemently opposed to is going to Washington, D.C. on a Saturday and marching in circles, showing our signs to empty buildings, saying, "Oh, you stupid buildings, if you don't change your ways, we're going to march by you again next year." And make sure nobody's in them. They don't stay in D.C., especially when there's an anti-war march. So anyway, at the end of the march, some people lied down in front of the White House, and the cops had cordoned them off. And so I wanted to go where they were because there's only 4 people. And I thought, there's 8,000 people here. How come only 4 people are risking arrest when, you know, people are dying? You know, it's not enough. You can go to Washington, D.C. One of the good things about it is we could see each other, you know, people from all over the country. But, you know, you have to go the next step. You have to go a step further than that. And I believe that's to perform acts of civil resistance. And don't tell the judge, because I still have my trial in June, but I was planning on getting arrested later anyway. I wasn't planning on getting arrested then. But somebody put the barrier down. And I said, it was my good friends, Mathis Chereau of IVAW and Elaine Brower from Military Families Speak Out. And so when the barrier went down, I crossed it. And I was immediately body slammed and handcuffed. And then I went and spent 2 nights in jail for an offense that has no jail time. And then I have a trial I have to go back for. But I think that until we start doing more acts of civil resistance, until we're willing to put our bodies on the line to save the lives of other people, then things aren't going to change. And we have to do it in a way that causes them discomfort. I don't think Barack Obama was discomforted that weekend I spent in jail at all. In fact, I blame Rahm Emanuel for every bad thing that happens to me now. So they might have had a beer together. Who knows? We know they like to drink beer. But anyway, that's just a joke, by the way. Sometimes I just joke. And so anyway, it's the only way that things have changed in this country, is when the people rose up together and said enough is enough. And it never was a majority of the people that did it. You know, it was only what Margaret Mead calls, you know, a small group of dedicated people. That's all we need. But when I crossed that line and there were thousands of people behind me, I thought hundreds of people would cross that line with me. You know how many people did? 2. 2 people crossed over with me. And I thought, if hundreds of people had crossed over, I wouldn't have had to spend all weekend in jail. You know, that would have made an impact if hundreds of people cross that police line. I also think that doing civil disobedience when we tell the popo what we're doing isn't effective either. It's like getting the permission of the system to protest the system. You know, we have to do these almost like on a very, it has to be guerrilla-like acts of nonviolent civil resistance. I'm trying to get together something called Camp Out Now. We did it for a week on the lawn of the Washington Monument in March before the protest on the 20th. The police came in and shut it down while I was in jail. I think that's kind of why I had to stay in jail all weekend. You know, the leader of the camp was in jail, and it lost a lot of courage when I was in jail. So we're going to go back in May. May 28th is on a Friday. Casey's birthday is May 29th. On Saturday, we're going to set up camp again. The 31st is a very important day. That's Memorial Day. And Piece of the Action, the organization that supports Camp Out Now, PEACE of the Action, not Peace Action, Piece of the Action. We actually do actions. We're going to do a picket line in front of the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. The Smithsonian Air and Space Museum has drones that have actually dropped bombs on people, sponsored by one of the leading manufacturers of these unmanned assassination vehicles, DynCorp. So we've done banner drops in the Smithsonian that say drones kill kids, and we've also handed out literature, because it's just so amazing to me that people bring their kids to these places and they don't know how much is sponsored by the military-industrial complex. And you know, I see little kids wearing camis, and I say, what are you doing? Are you raising somebody that you want to go and die and kill for the robber class? You know, come on, people. Let's start thinking a new way in this country, a totally different way in this country. So if you can come down to Washington, D.C., we're, like I said, starting again May 28th. Our entire demand from Camp Out Now is to bring our troops home from Iraq and Afghanistan and the bases, close the bases. And we're just concentrating on Iraq and Afghanistan and the problems associated with them, like Pakistan, because you know, we realize that the military-industrial complex has its tentacles in every part of this world, almost. But we think that that's a good start, is bringing the troops out of these so-called, you know, hot wars that we have going on in Iraq and Afghanistan. And if we don't do it this year, we have a democratic tyranny in Congress We have a president who's a Democrat. We have people in positions of power, the Speaker of the House, the Senate Majority Leader, and the President, who all three of them looked me in the face in 2005 and said, Cindy, help us get back into power and we'll help you end the wars. Well, I'm still waiting 5 years later from, yeah, no, I haven't been holding my breath. Yeah, I might be the eternal optimist, but I'm not stupid. So yeah, if we can't do it this year, when are we gonna do it? One thing I forgot to tell you all is that not only was I arrested and put in jail for 2 days, like something like 52 hours, I have a stay-away order from the White House. So there's 2 places I'm not welcome in this country, Scranton and the White House. So that's never happened to me when Bush was president. And you guys all know I harassed the you-know-what out of George Bush. I never got to stay. I was expecting to have a restraining order, any second from the Bush administration saying, just leave us alone. So everywhere I go, I feel very welcome and loved and supported. So even here, by you all. So thank you.